Hello, I'm Kate. Welcome to the Hawthorn Cottage Podcast. Today is Tuesday the 18th of November and this is episode 18. You can find me on Instagram as Kate_Hawthorncottagecraft, on Ravelry as ARunnerBean, and we have a Ravelry group called the Hawthorn Cotagecraft Podcast group. And there you'll find show notes and any information about knit-alongs and just any other chit-chat. You're very welcome if you're here for the first time. It's lovely to see you. I hope you enjoy your time here at the cottage. And if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. It's lovely to have your company again. If you notice, we've changed location today. I thought we would move out of the craft room. It's quite dark in there at the best of times, but at this time of year it's particularly dark. And like many of you, I'm looking for a wee bit of light these days. So Christmas season has started in this house, and I thought we'd come out beside the tree in the kitchen, and there's actually quite a lot of light in here because there are doors here. So hopefully you'll enjoy the new location for this episode, and you'll enjoy the fun and the crack and all the chat about the knitting, of which there is a lot. This episode, hopefully it'll not run on too long, I'll not jibber jabber too much, but I hope you've got your cuppa and you enjoy your time here. I'm beginning today with a giveaway. Over the past month, we have had some very kind donations to the podcast, and this is the best time of the year, I think, for a giveaway when everyone's busy buying presents for other people, and this is your opportunity to get something for yourself that you can enjoy over the next month or so. Lee from the Luli podcast very kindly gifted to me and to the podcast, to the viewers, her new collection of patterns called Tiny Owls. It's a colourwork collection of a hat, mittens and socks, and they feature tiny owls. It's a beautiful, beautiful collection. I'm really looking forward to knitting this one myself. I'm actually even tempted to knit the mittens, and I've talked here before that I've never knit mittens. But the socks and the hat are beautiful, and I think you'll love this collection. If you would like a chance of winning this collection, hop over to the Ravelry thread. Please be a member of the group and answer the prompt, what is your favourite Christmas tradition? Everyone, I think, or holiday. Not everyone celebrates Christmas, and maybe it's just a holiday, or this time of year, what is your favourite tradition to brighten up December, the dark days of December? My favourite tradition is when we put up our Christmas tree, the family tree in the living room. Kids decorate it. That's their tree. This one here is mine. But they decorate it, and once the tree is up and decorated, the fire is lit, the lights are put on, we watch Polar Express and we drink hot chocolate, and it just starts off the Christmas season for us. So what is your favourite tradition at this time of year, regardless of the holiday that you celebrate? There will be a draw for the pattern collection, and I will contact Lee when we draw the winner. But I'm also going to throw into that collection a skein of yarn. I had ordered from Lay Family Yarn. I'm sure you all know Kelly's beautiful yarn. You'll see it on Instagram. I'll put the details in the show notes, and I'll put it across the screen. It's Lay Family Yarn. I had ordered a skein of her Christmas yarn that I'll show you closer to Christmas when I'm starting to knit it up. But she very kindly donated a skein for the podcast, and I want to put it in with this particular giveaway. You could maybe use it in your colour work, maybe not. Use it for whatever you like. So this is the yarn that was donated. This is the card. She's on Etsy, and it is this beautiful tweed yarn. It is 85% superwash merino and 15% Donegal nep, and the colour is autumn leaves, and they're just really beautiful shades. within that. I'm actually really tempted. This is one of my favourite colours. Tempted by it myself. But that is going to be in the giveaway with the Tiny Owls pattern collection. Again, jump over to the Ravelry thread and answer the prompt, and on the next episode I'll draw for that and we'll get that out to you as soon as possible. So that's the first giveaway. There's a second one. It is Christmas after all. And this one is again another pattern that was donated to the podcast, and this is by Naomi, who is Cozy Cute Knits on Instagram and on Ravelry. And Naomi is a Northern Ireland designer. And she has created a sock pattern called Spellbound Socks, and I'll insert a photograph here. So there's the sock pattern, and there's also a skein of yarn from Bear and Sheep's Clothing. Now, I've featured Bear and Sheep's Clothing before, and Bernie and Derek donated 2 skeins, and one of them is going to be kept for the knit-along that is running in the group. But this is for this particular giveaway, and it's the yarn that they dyed for the Nottingham Yarn Expo that was run a few weeks ago. And there are just lovely pops of colour in there that you could maybe use on your Spellbound socks. And this is 25% nylon and 75% blue-faced Leicester, BFL. And it's beautiful yarn. So that is going to be in the second giveaway. That is going to be run on Instagram, and I will put up a post on Instagram about that, so keep a wee eye out for that, and I'll let that run for a week or so, and then we'll draw for that as well. So there are 2 fabulous giveaways running at the moment. Look out for them on Ravelry and on Instagram. So on with some knitting. In the last month I've been fairly busy with knitting. There's been a lot of different things being worked on, but I actually got a couple of things finished. I have 2 finished objects for you today. One of them is almost a historic piece, because I started it ages ago and I discussed it months ago, and it wasn't a particularly big project, but I kind of stalled on it. And that was the Busta Beanie by Gudrun Johnson from the Shetland Wool Week 2017. It was the free pattern from it. And I finally got this finished. I'm trying to get where I'm not getting glare. There we go. And it had languished, I think, because my colour work experience wasn't negative, but I find, because I'm a thrower and I was doing everything with one hand, I've talked about this before, where I would use one colour, drop it, lift the other colour, which it just made it slow, and I had decided that this would be quite a slow project. It was going to be very slow considering it didn't come out. But I've been working on, one of my works in progress is colour work, and I'll discuss it a little later on. But I had started, for some reason, I started with both hands. I don't know why, I don't know what clicked, and I'm sure there's a lot of the technique is still wrong, but it was certainly more efficient for me. I put my contrast colour, my second colour, in my left hand. I think that's the right way of doing it. Correct me if I'm wrong. But for some reason it clicked, and I found I was whizzing through the colour work in the other project, and I thought, I must lift out the Busta Beanie, because I was in one of those stages where a lot of the projects were big projects and I wanted something fairly quick to work on, and I thought, I'll practice on the Busta Beanie. And sure enough, I finished this in no time at all. I think when I had last spoken to you, I was somewhere in here, and all of a sudden, within a few days, I had got to the top. It really, really went very quickly. I love this pattern. I will knit this again. I posted pictures on Instagram. It has slouch in it, and I think if I were to knit it again, I probably wouldn't put the slouch. I would start my decreases slightly further down and make it a tighter beanie. But I kept a pattern for this particular one, and I've worn it. I mean, I tried to keep it good for the podcast, but the podcast episode kept getting put back, and then it got cold, so it had to be worn. So it has been worn, and it is incredibly warm. It is Jameson's of Shetland, 100% Shetland wool, and it's their 2-ply, which I think is equivalent to 4-ply. And the colours that I used, the darkest colour is Mary Dancers, and then we have Wren, which is the beige, and Red Currant. It was the colour I think I substituted from the main pattern. It was almost an ochre, I think, was this colour in the original pattern, which was beautiful, but I thought the red was something I would wear more of. So I'm absolutely delighted with this. I knit it on a 3mm needle, which is a 2.5, and a 3.5mm, which is a US 4. And as I say, it whizzed up. It took no time at all once I got going. I put a pom-pom on it. My pom-pom skills, I used the Clover pom-pom maker. Leave a lot to be desired. I thought I had it trimmed well, but there are a lot of little odds and ends. But I did put the pom-pom on this time slightly differently. I think I saw this. I don't even know where I saw it. But I left the strings on it, and I put them through a button and then just tied a bow. And I'm going to leave this so that if I ever want to take the pom-pom off, I can take it off and reattach it again easily. But I thought it was a really good idea, just putting a button in, threading the strand through and just tying it in a bow. That is simply how it is put on. There's no other sewing in of the pom-pom, and I think it works really well. It keeps it nice and tight. So that's the inside of the colour work, and I think my strands and floats are quite neat, and they're not too tight. So I'm over the moon with this. Eventually it got knit. I did say, I think months ago, that it was a slow knit, and it certainly was a slow knit, in that it was a slow object to be finished. But once I started to get going and get the technique, it was quite a fast knit. So it is really worth going. It's a free pattern, as I said, from Shetland Wool Week 2017. So at least now I think I have 2 Shetland Wool Week hats. I have this one and I have the Babel hat. And now that I've done this, I have all the yarn for the Croft House hat, and I might actually now get it done. So that was the first finished object. The second finished object was a little larger, and it was a sweater. I last year attended the Fine and Dandy Market in Belfast, and the Fine and Dandy Market is a wonderful market that takes place once a month. Is it the last Sunday of the month or the third Sunday of the month? I'm not quite sure. All the details for it are on Facebook, the Fine and Dandy Market. And they take themes, I think most months. But in November every year they do the Narnia Market, and I've told you before, Narnia is my favourite childhood and adult stories. I just love Narnia and everything to do with it. And last year I bought yarn from Fine Fish Yarns, who was vending there, and just, I have to put this in here, congratulations Terry on the birth of your second daughter, Fola, and I can't wait to meet her. I think I'm meeting her this week. So if you know Fine Fish Yarn, she's on maternity leave at the moment, and she now has a second beautiful little girl. Anyway, last year when she was still vending at the Fine and Dandy Market, I bought her Narnia colourway, and it was the nicest fawn I ever did meet, and it was from her shimmer sock base. And with her yarn I knit the Pavement Sweater by Vera Valimaki. And I don't know if you can see it on the screen, there's a bit of twinkle. It's the shimmer there, maybe. It's her shimmer sock base, which is 75 superwash merino, 20 nylon and 5% stellina, silver stellina. And I'm really pleased with the finished item. I have been wearing it. I wasn't sure about it, to be honest. I'm really pleased with it now that it's finished, and it's a nice sweater to layer over a long sleeve t-shirt. The reason I think I wasn't sure about it was the loose gauge that it's knit on. It's knit on a 3mm needle for the ribbing, and which is 2.5, and then it's knit on a 4.5mm, which is a 7 needle, and it's 4-ply, which gives it a very loose gauge, and particularly for superwash merino, it made it very loose looking. Now, since it has been blocked, I think it is evened up, and I am very pleased with it, and I will wear it. I love the superwash merino for shawls, but I'm not as keen on it anymore for sweaters. I find that when you block it, or when you soak it, it can stretch out of shape. It doesn't hold its shape in the same way that the more natural yarns, non-superwash yarns are. So I am very happy with it, but I'm not sure how many more items of clothing I will knit with superwash. I think I do have some more superwash in my stash for sweaters, and I will use it. It's not that it's going to not get used, but I think from here on in, maybe when I'm shopping for yarn, for sweaters, for garments, it'll not be superwash. Anyway, I am very pleased with this. It's, as I said, it's Vera Valimaki. You will find it on Ravelry. It's a pavement sweater. It's a really versatile sweater, and it's my Christmas sweater. So it'll get lots of use this month. It's knit top down. Showing you the back of it. It's knit top down, and it is a really fast knit. I had started it in July when I was at Fibre East with Terry, and it was because I wanted a straightforward knit, and it really is. There's no shaping in the body of it. Any work that's done is all done at the top, and once you've passed that, it's straight down, and then a little bit of shaping at the bottom, and that's it. It is a really pleasant knit, a TV knit. So this sweater is part of the Garments Galore cal that we're running in the group. I'm running this cal, this knit along, crochet along. It can be for a crochet garment. I'm running this in conjunction with Little Big Knits with Selma, her podcast group. So if you want to go and watch Selma and see what she's doing with her garments, jump over there too. It's well worth a watch. But we're running this together, and all the details for the knit along are in the Ravelry thread. There are finished objects threads in both groups, so feel free to put your finished objects in both threads. You're in with double the chance. We each have a separate thread for a particular part of the cal. In Selma's group, if you have knit your very first garment ever, then hop over and put your finished object in that thread as well. If you have knit a garment that is over, I think it's over 1400 meters, just check. In my thread, it's mine, I should know. Put your finished object in there if it's a larger piece. It's been brilliant looking at the threads. There are finished objects appearing, and they're all beautiful, and it's giving lots of ideas, and the queues are getting bigger. But jump over there if you want ideas and if you want to see some beautiful finished objects. There are chatter threads. Please don't chat in the finished objects thread. It's really easy when you see something that is really gorgeous and you want to comment on it. Love it, like it, But if you want to make a comment on it, jump over to the chatter thread and chat there. It just keeps it simple and clean when it comes to picking the prizes eventually. And we do have some prizes already. As I said, with Bear and Sheep's clothing, yarn, there's a bag that I know is possibly on its way, and some other donations towards it. If you're a maker, if you're a designer, if you would like to donate a prize to that pot for the finished objects of the garment, please feel free to contact me or Selma for that. The more prizes we have for all these wonderful objects, the better. It'll be lovely to kind of congratulate and just give a little bit of love for all the work that everybody's putting into their garments. So if you are working on any garment, not socks, not hats, any garment, any piece of clothing, please feel free to jump into those groups. When I was in Ottawa last month, Selma and I did a little bit of recording together, just a little short snippet where we've discussed garments, and Selma has already put her little bit into her last episode where we discuss part of garment making. And here I'm going to insert the other part of the discussion about garment making and just our views. And actually I've talked about the superwash merino, and we discussed that a little bit in this little segment. But here's a little bit where we have been together and discussed our garment making.
Hello again.
Hello. Selma and I have been talking about yarns that maybe if we were to knit with again, we wouldn't necessarily use with garments. What or which would you avoid now if you were to knit another garment?
Well, I'll definitely be knitting another garment because I love knitting garments. But is that
You surprise
obvious?
me.
Is that obvious?
You surprise me.
So
My sweater whisperer. You've heard me discuss my sweater whisperer. She is here.
So actually I should have brought it down because I knit the February lady sweater a few years ago, and you haven't actually even seen it. I should bring it down. It was made out of Malabrigo worsted, which is a single ply yarn, and unless it were something that was woolen spun, like a Lopi or whatever, and I would never knit with single ply again for a sweater. It pilled absolutely horribly, and it's something that I have to wash so carefully because it can felt so easily, and so that has actually kind of become my house coat. I wear it over my nightie, on a Sunday morning. And so I would probably never make a garment in a single ply. I've seen a lot of people make sweaters out of Madeline Tosh Merino Light, for example, which is a single ply, and I'm curious how that wears. I'd be very hesitant, I have to say myself. If I found a single ply that behaved in a way that was sort of unexpected, I might. I think the other one that I might not use again is a silk merino blend. That is a drape, because silk can be treated differently depending on how it's used and spun and treated. So a raw silk actually can have a very different behavior than another kind of silk. But I made a cardigan out of Malabrigo merino silk DK. I can't remember exactly what it's called. And that just draped afterwards in a way that I wasn't really expecting. And so if I were to use that type of yarn again, I would want to use it for a garment that I was hoping would drape, and not use it for a garment that I expected to stay the way it was when I finished it, because it just naturally drapes. So I'd want to take that into account. And that was also a single ply.
Okay.
So that one kind of almost went into the charity pile. I just wasn't very happy with it. What about you?
I have two, actually. The first one would be anything that's 100% superwash. I knit, and I talked about it, I think, in a very early episode, when I called it the Claude sweater. I can't actually remember the name of the pattern. It looks very like the flax. And I knit it in 100% superwash merino, and it looked beautiful when it was knit, and I love the yarn and I love the colour, but I washed it, and I hand washed it. I hand washed most of my hand knits, if not all of them. And when I took it out of the water, it went to my knees. It literally went from my waist to my knees. And the only way I could get it back into shape was to put it in the tumble dryer, which was scary. And I had to just continually check it in case it shrank too much.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think I would use that again because I don't like the lack of structure.
And did it go back to the shape?
It did.
Okay.
But it means I'm very, very reluctant to wash it again. And it's a creamy white base, which makes
washing it important.
So in that respect, I'm disappointed with that. And I certainly think I'm going to be tending more towards the natural. I think that's why I've gravitated towards the natural yarn since. And the other one was, it was a Drops bulky that I knit a Gramps cardigan with. And I love the yarn and I like the price point of the yarn, but it's my house coat and it never saw the light of day, ever. Now, part of that was because I made a botched job of joining the yarn in the back of it, but it pilled before it came off the needles.
Yeah.
It was completely pilled.
And was it single ply as well?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so because I actually don't like singles
Mm-hmm.
in any form.
Mm.
I don't think it was.
Okay.
And the other reason was because it was alpaca, and I love alpaca, but it was cheap alpaca. And
somebody will answer the
yes,
phone because they're all upstairs.
and cheap alpaca made me itch, not initially, but not very long after that, so I can't actually wear it unless I've got long
Right.
sleeves and layers on. So I wouldn't knit with that again in a sweater.
Now it's interesting what you say about superwash yarn because I haven't had that experience. I haven't knit a lot with superwash yarns, but I did make what's that Whisper cardigan? The Whisper? Is it the Whisper by Hannah Fettig? Suddenly the name is eluding me.
Yeah, names are gone.
And I made a sweater by Joji with Malabrigo Arroyo, and so far my experience has been okay. Mm-hmm. But I would agree with you that when you first wash them, it's kind of scary. Mm-hmm. But mine bounced back.
Was yours 100% superwash?
Yeah.
It was, okay.
Well, actually not the cardigan because that was a fingering weight, and I think there was nylon and stellina in it. Mm-hmm. It's my sparkly cardigan.
I'm knitting the pavement, and exactly that at the moment. It's 75 superwash merino, and then there's nylon and stellina.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how it reacts.
Yeah, and so it doesn't mean that those types of yarns can't work, but I think it's a question of considering what you're using them for, and perhaps gauge and
Definitely.
That kind of thing, right? Because tons of people knit with superwash and they don't have issues, and others knit with different types of alpaca and it's okay.
Exactly.
And so it really depends.
That's exactly it. And I think it's just, you find what suits you. All garment knitting, I think, is what suits you and what you're happy with.
Yeah.
And what you're happy to wear. So thank you.
Yeah, that was fun. So thank you for joining us on the Garment Cal, if you're joining us.
Following on from that, we're going to look at what I've been working on, my works in progress, and the first one of those is a sweater that is going towards the Garments Galore Cal part of it. And the sweater that I'm working on is from this publication, By Hand, which is a community-based book. It's beautiful. It looks at different locales. Now this is the first one I've got, and it's issue number 4, I think. And it is based on Puget Sound, so it's the Pacific Northwest of the States, and everything in it is to do with that area. But the pattern that I'm knitting is this one here. Try not to show them. And it's a Fern and Feather by Jennifer Steingass. And I'm sure you all know her beautiful yoked colourwork sweaters. They're very, very popular at the moment. But I decided to knit this because there's a group of ladies knitting this for the upcoming Edinburgh Yarn Festival in March. And we decided to knit this together for that, so there'll be a selection of the fern and feathers. And one lady, Maria, I'm speaking to you, Ninja Chickens, has hers finished. Overachiever or what? I'm not finished, but I'm well on, and I have really, really enjoyed this pattern. It's living in my ARunnerBean trundle bag. It is such a roomy bag, and this is my sweater so far. I have the colour work finished, and this is where, as I alluded to earlier, I started the two-handed colour work. And this is it so far. I love this. I am hoping beyond hope. I have tried it on so far, which is the joy of top-down knitting. I've tried it on and it seems to be okay. But I love this pattern. The colour work in it is really straightforward, very intuitive. And I've joined in underneath the arms, and I'm working down the body. I've set it aside this week a little bit, but I'm working away on it and I love it, and I think it is going to be a really beautiful sweater. I'm knitting it with Green Mountain Spinnery worsted weight, and I love this yarn. It is toothy, it is so sheepy, and I love it. The two colours I am using are, this one is grey, which is 8790, and this one is red, no it's not, it's chestnut, which is 8575. And they're beautiful, beautiful yarns to work with, and particularly for the colour work. One of the things I love with yarn like this is if you make a mistake and have to tinker it back, the stitches stay. You're not worried about losing them and them disappearing on you as you would with some other yarns. I just love the feel of this yarn. I don't know, I would say I'll have to wear it over something, maybe not. It's going to be incredibly warm. Edinburgh Yarn Festival is usually quite hot in the venue, but it's going to be warm regardless at some point when all the ladies join together to have the display of fern and feathers. But it is warm with the stranded. These are my strands. Again, I think they're okay. I don't think they're too tight. I did worry about that, particularly because I'd changed my style of working with them, but I think they're okay. I'm sure the experts out there can tell me just at a glance where I'm going wrong, but I think it looks okay, and I think once it's blocked, it's going to really open up the pattern. I love that. I really, really love this. I am knitting it on my Leica needles, and it's a 3.5mm, which is a US 4, and a 4mm, which is a US 6. Now, the Leica needles, or Luca needles, I really still don't know how to pronounce that. I bought the interchangeable set when I was away. And now that I've been working with them a while, I think the fixed circulars, and if you remember, I had bought one set of fixed circulars a long time ago to try them out. The fixed circulars are wonderful. If you're thinking about these needles and about purchasing these needles, because they're all the rage at the minute, they're the trendy needle that everybody's talking about at the moment, I would seriously consider, if you're thinking about it, buy the fixed circulars. I like interchangeable needles. I have different sets of interchangeable needles. I love interchangeable needles. I have Knit Pro needles, and apparently, I don't know if it's the same company make these needles, but apparently the cables work with the needles anyway, the Knit Pro cables, if they're not the same company. I have used Knit Pro Symphonies, and I have Things and Carbons and things, and I have never had an issue with the joins. I think I've only ever had one needle that had a bad join, and it was actually a fixed zing, and it was just rough. But in the interchangeable needles, I've never had an issue. These, on the other hand, I love the tips. These are slick. For being a wooden needle, they're slick, and they're working with this really toothy yarn well, and sometimes wooden needles and toothy yarn don't work for me. So the tips are beautiful, but I had a real issue with the joins. Once it's joined, it's very smooth. There's no issue there. There's no lumps or humps or bumps. But getting those little tips screwed on to the cables was really difficult. One would screw on really easily, and the other one wouldn't. And it wasn't that it was on twisted. I took it off, I swapped them round, but I had real difficulty getting them joined, to the point that I handed them to my husband, and I was really concerned that they were going to snap as I tried to get them screwed on. It was really, really difficult. And I'm not alone in that. I've spoken to at least one other person who has had that problem, exactly the same problem, that they were too tight, they wouldn't screw in, real difficulty. And then, once they're on, I do twist. I know I twist my needles when I'm knitting, but they started to unscrew. So between being difficult to screw in and then untwisting, I'm not very happy with the experience of these interchangeable needles. As I said, I love the tips. I love the fixed, and the fixed circulars in them I would thoroughly recommend. But I would ask around if you're considering getting the interchangeables, see what everybody else's opinion is. Now, as I said, there's certainly one person I know of who had exactly the same issue as I did. Just ask around and see what the consensus is. Fixed, as I said, go for it. But I'm just very reluctant to recommend the interchangeable set, just for that reason. Once they're on, they're lovely, but they do tend to unscrew. Just not a 100% positive experience. But it's not taken away from my love of knitting this sweater. And hopefully over the next few weeks now, as I'm sitting in the winter, this will get done fairly quickly, because I'm on it's just stocking stitch now in the one colour to the bottom, and then the sleeves to put in. Thoroughly recommend this pattern. Fern and Feather, join in. It's lovely to see them all taking shape, and I'm really enjoying seeing the girls that I'm knitting along with, and it'll be fun come Edinburgh to see us all in our sweaters. All different colours. The colours are beautiful, and that's the lovely thing about it. You have a base colour, and you can put in whatever colour you like to show off the pattern. So that was one sweater I worked on. And I resurrected another project that has kept getting put aside recently. This is an Emerald Fibres bag. I'm showing off all the bags today. I don't normally show my bags. This is an Emerald Fibres bag. And I have resurrected this, my Scully cardigan. Now, the reason I think Scully has languished, and that I let it languish, because I've knit quite a few other sweaters in between starting this one. But the reason I think it really languished was because I wasn't liking the fabric that was knitting up. I love this pattern, and I desperately want to knit it. I love the yarn, I love the pattern, I love everything connected to it. I knit this because I greatly admire Knit British and the podcast, and Louise is just lovely, and Louise helped me pick the yarn for it at Edinburgh, and it's a very special project, but it kept getting put aside. For some reason, I started knitting this on small needles, smaller than was recommended. On the pattern, I started it on a 3mm, which is a 2.5, and a 3.75mm, which is a US 5. And I don't know why I did that. I can't remember why, because I certainly didn't gauge swatch, because as you know, I don't really do that very often. So I don't know why. And the thing is, it's a double knit yarn, so it was particularly small needles, and it was coming up like chainmail. And because the yarn, which I'll show you in a moment, is one of the more rustic yarns, it was quite sore in the hands to knit at such a tight gauge. And I put it up on Instagram, kind of a question on Insta stories: what should I do? Should I frog this or knit this? And the majority of people, well, it was quite even, you know, oh, frog it if you're not enjoying it, keep going with it, because I was almost at, it's knitting one, it's a cardigan, I'd almost got to the armhole, I'd knit quite a lot of it. And I was really quite sad at the thought of frogging it, and I didn't want to admit defeat, and as I said, it's special, so I really, really wanted this to work. So I took the bull by the horns and I did frog it, but as soon as I frogged it, I cast it on again. Now, I haven't very much done, but it is so much pleasanter, and I've stopped in the middle of a row for some reason, but there's still not an awful lot to show anyway. I'm back on the rib again, and it just feels so much nicer. I really don't know what possessed me to knit on such small needles. I have transferred it. I'm now knitting the rib on 3.75, which is the 5, US 5, and I will knit the body in the 4mm, which is the US 6. And I think that will work much better, almost at the needle size that the pattern recommends. I really don't know why, what possessed me. It is much nicer, and I think it'll be a far better fit, and it's certainly a much pleasanter experience to knit. So I'm knitting it in blacker yarns, West Country Tweed, and I love this yarn, and that was what was making me so sad. I wasn't enjoying knitting it. It's all to do with the tools you use. I wasn't enjoying knitting it, and now I am. And they're natural colour grey. And I'm going to love this. I know I'm going to love it once it's done. So I have all these frogged balls of yarn in my bag now. But that should now whiz up in no time once I sit down and get on with it. It will be finished. I'm going to have an array of Edinburgh garments to wear this year. I will have my fern and feather, and this is definitely going to be worn at Edinburgh Yarn Festival in March. So that is what I'm working on sweater wise and garment wise. I also have been working on my shawl, which I started for Rhinebeck. I started on my travels to Rhinebeck. And again, I finished in the middle of a row, which is, I think it's because the rows are so long. And this is the Road to Rhinebeck shawl by Mina Phillip, who's the knitting expat, and I love this pattern. It has rekindled my shawl knitting love, from what I can show you of it. This is where I'm at. And I just take it out every now and again and do another row of it, because say the rows are quite long. It's Fine Fish Yarns double knit, and it's this colour is Butterball, and this one is Acorn, I think. And I just love this. It's very squishy. I love the pattern. It's very simple in its look, but just oh so effective and squishy. I love this. And I'm on the second last section, I think. But as I said, the rows are quite long at the moment, so it's slow work. I'm knitting this on my Knit Pros, 4.5mm, which is a US 7. And it's working up. There's nothing very much more to say about it. It was part of a mystery cal that Mina ran in September, and I kept the pattern. I bought it but didn't actually do it along as the mystery, and kept it for the start of my travels when I was heading off. And I've done more of it actually at home than I actually did on my travels. But that is one of my works in progress. And that's, between that and the sweaters, you'd think that would be enough to keep me going, but no, I have other works in progress on the go. Another one is another Rhinebeck one. As you know, I started socks, and I started the Crazy Sock Lady, her beautiful pattern, which was the Rhinebeck is Calling sock, and I have a half finished object. I have one sock off the needles, and I love these. They were quite a slow knit at the start because they're, the needles I used were the Knit Picks Caspians, and I've talked about these before. I go through phases of loving them, I go through phases of hating them, and on this particular sock I was hating them. They are great, they're wooden needles, and I had chosen them because they were wooden and I could use them on the plane, but they're not good for patterned socks. They're great for vanilla socks, but it was making this knit quite slow and particularly frustrating. So I had got to, I think I got to about here, and it top down. I got to about here and I changed to my metal needles. I was a bit concerned it would change my gauge, but it didn't. And I whizzed down the rest of them. So I'm actually knitting them on my Addy circulars. They're 2.5mm. I did a 1x1 twisted rib, 64 stitch cast on as per usual. Then the pattern, heel flap and gusset, which I haven't knit in such a long time. And then the rounded toe. So I'm absolutely delighted with these now. I'm knitting it, as you know, from a sock blank by Maria from Ninja Chickens, and it's getting smaller. But I still love it. It still gives me the thrill when I see it. It still gets oohs and ahs when I take it out and other people see it. I just love these. So I'm working on that, and I literally have the second one cast on and working on the rib. There's not an awful lot to show. I'm still in the rib of that. These tend to stay in the car and be my car knitting, or in my bag, my handbag, and if I'm out and about, I just lift them. So those are working really well. I'm really enjoying them. I'm really pleased that I've got the first one done. It gives me the spur now to work on the second one, because as I said, I wasn't really enjoying it, and it was nothing to do with the pattern. It was all to do with the needle I was using, and once I changed the needle, I really started to whiz through it again, and it's just that lovely little lacy pattern. And I look forward to getting wearing these eventually. So that is the Rhinebeck is Calling socks by the Crazy Sock Lady. And, you know, you can't just have one pair of socks on the go. You have to have two. And like everybody else, I fell down the rabbit hole of West Yorkshire spinners. And these socks are living in this little bag. And I wanted to show you this one because this was a swap that I did with Lee from Luli. We did a bag swap. And this is her sock bag, and it's drawstring, and it is just, it's one of the most well-made bags I've seen, and it's brilliant. It's got a little strap on it. It is, I think it's one of her Christmas bags, but actually this pattern to me is just like a lovely little winter bag, and this will be used throughout the winter, not just at Christmas. And it's great. It holds one skein of yarn and your project. Got a little glimpse of it there. So she sent me this, and she also sent, and I want to show you this now before I show you the sock, this little notions pouch, which I think she's thinking about making. I don't think she has them on the market yet. Maybe you do. I'm not sure. Just check out. But she certainly wanted this one tried out, and I was more than willing to try it out. And it's beautiful. Again, just it's so well professionally made. And this little notions pouch is great. In it I have a pen. I have a little needle gauge. It holds quite a lot. I have my tape measure. I have my scissors in here. And I have my needles, my darning needles. And I carry one of these at all times, a little crochet hook. I like this one because it's got a hobbit's door for picking up all those stray random stitches that get lost. And then on the little hook I've hung a couple of stitch markers, progress keepers. This one was from Maker's Haven, and I got in Rhinebeck, and a couple of other ones that I picked up in Rhinebeck too, I've talked about. But this little notions pouch is great, and as I say, keep everything in there, and it has the lovely little leather closure of the mermaid. And as I said, Lee's attention to detail in making these is beautiful. She also put in one of her lotions bars that she's working with, and she did talk in her own podcast about this, so I feel no guilt about saying that she's not going to put in all the lavender pieces, because I love lavender and I love the lotion bar is beautiful, but the lavender pieces went everywhere, and I think she's going to drop those out of her lavender lotion bars. But it was beautiful. So this was a lovely package in the swap. If you're interested in a bag, Lee's bags are extremely well made and are beautiful. And as I said, it's housing my Christmas socks. I was just caught up in the West Yorkshire Spinners colourway, and their colourway for this year is candy cane. And I went for this. I will say I was slightly reluctant to get the West Yorkshire Spinners. I have had their yarn before, but haven't actually knit with it yet. I had one skein of a plain cream colour that I had used last year. I had the Opal advent calendar last year. And when I was crocheting up the squares, because I crocheted the squares for a blanket for that, I joined them with the West Yorkshire Spinners cream. And I felt it was too fine for that purpose, and I wasn't overly keen on it, and I think it was just the wrong purpose for the yarn, because I have really thoroughly enjoyed knitting my socks with this yarn. And as I say, this is the candy cane, and I decided to do contrast cuffs, heels and toes with chocolate lime, one of the other colourways. I think I've got the right ball band on each of these, but it's their chocolate lime colourway. And I started, as you know, I'm not a fast sock knitter. A pair of socks can last for quite a long time with me, but I started these on Friday night, and I have a half finished object already. I think it was Friday night, or I think I cast them on Friday night and then started to knit them on Saturday morning early. Somebody said to me on Instagram, are you a fast knitter or an early riser? And I said, in this case, unfortunately, it was an early rise. But I have my first one knit. And I am thrilled with this. I might actually have a pair of Christmas socks to put on at the start of Advent, or very close to the start of Advent. These knit themselves. I did my normal 64 stitch cast on, but this time I decided to do a 2x2 rib. I did 15 rows of 2x2, and then I decided to start into the colourway, and I decided just to do a simple slip stitch pattern. It's not from anywhere. I had to increase from 64 stitches to 66 because I needed 6 stitches for the repeats. It was 5, knit 5, slip 1, knit 5, slip 1 for 2 rows, and then knit a row on the 3rd row, and then that was the pattern repeat. So for 2 rows it's knit 5, slip 1, and then on the 3rd row knit all the way around. So that's what I worked on. I put in an afterthought heel, which is, I think I did a couple of rows too many here. I always put in 2 rows before I start the decrease, just to give me a little bit of depth here, because I have a high arch. But I think I put in too many, and it's slightly big, but it doesn't really matter. And then a rounded toe, and I kept the base plain. And as I said, these knit themselves. I cast on last night, so that's as far as I am with the new rib, but they will whiz through. Really, really enjoying them. West Yorkshire Spinners. So I think that is all the knitting finished objects, works in progress. I've acquired a few things over the last month, but I'll talk about those as I use them. I much prefer doing that. I know there have been a couple of episodes where I've had stash, but I quite like interspersing my stash just as I use it rather than doing a big section on it. So as I knit the little bits and pieces that have come in, I'll talk about those. I hope you're enjoying this start to the holiday season, and it's brightening up, as I said, the dull, dark days of December. These can be particularly difficult days for a lot of people, myself included, and sometimes you need just a wee bit of cheer and light to brighten up these few months. So enjoy your knitting, stay cozy, stay warm. It's getting cold in this part of the world. I'm sure it's getting lovely and hot in other parts of the world, but here it's getting very, very nippy. So stay cozy, enjoy your knitting, and I'll see you again very soon.